Assembly Committee on Government Affairs will come to order. Mr. Secretary, please call roll.
Assemblywoman Anderson.
Present.
Assemblywoman Black.
Here.
Assemblywoman Brown May.
Here.
Assemblywoman Considine.
Here.
Assemblywoman Dickman.
Here.
Assemblywoman Duran.
Here.
Assemblyman Ellison.
Present.
Assemblywoman Martinez.
Present.
Assemblyman Matthews. Assemblyman MacArthur.
I can hear you, so I'm here.
Assemblywoman Thomas.
Here.
Assemblywoman Torres. Chair Flores.
Present. Thank you, Secretary. Please let the record reflect that Assemblywoman Torres is absent excused. Should she make her way in a little bit later in the meeting, please mark her as present. We do have a quorum. Good morning, members. Happy Friday. I know everybody's excited about that. I want to remind everybody, please keep your microphone on mute unless you are speaking, and that you please keep your camera on at all times. And should you have to jump off for whatever reason, just give us a quick heads up. We understand that you need to do that at times. I want to welcome those of you who are following us virtually this morning. Thank you for coming to your Committee on Government Affairs. Just wanted to do a recap of the agenda for today. We're going to take it in the order it appears. We have two bill presentations, Assembly Bill 268 and Assembly Bill 280. We look forward to engaging in that conversation, and then we'll do the public comment at the very end. So with that, we'll go ahead and open up the hearing on Assembly Bill 268. Assemblywoman Krasner, good morning, welcome.
Good morning, Chair Flores and committee members. For the record, I am Assemblywoman Lisa Krasner, representing Nevada State Assembly District 26. Today with me, I have two co-presenters, Ms. Stephanie McCurry and Mr. Lonnie Feemster. I am here today to present Assembly Bill 268, also referred to as Micaiah's Law. On January 5th, 2020, 18-year-old Micaiah Lee's mother called 911 to ask police for help because her son was armed, suicidal, and suffered from mental illness. She was worried about her son because he had a history of mental illness, and he had told her that he wanted to commit suicide. He called the police for help. The police responded, chased his car, and later that night, Micaiah was shot 7 times and died. 6 months later, on June 29th, I was with my 2 sons when the decision of the district attorney came out, concluding that the shooting of Micaiah was justified. My sons and I watched the body cam footage of the shooting that night on the television news. Thinking about my own 2 sons who are about the same age as Micaiah, it had a profound impact on me. I wondered if there was a better way to handle this type of situation. And that is where I got the idea to bring this legislation. The goal of this bill is to accomplish 4 things. 1, ensure that every law enforcement agency in the state adopts a written policy regarding the use of force. 2, each of these written policies require that police officers utilize de-escalation techniques, crisis intervention, and other alternatives to force when feasible. 3, it would require that the law enforcement agency, when feasible, send a peace officer who has been trained in crisis intervention to respond to an incident involving a person who has made suicidal statements. 4, also in carrying out his or her duties, a peace officer shall not use deadly force against a person based on the danger that the person poses to himself or herself if a reasonable peace officer would believe that the person does not pose an imminent threat of death or serious bodily harm to the peace officer or another person. I want to stop here. And I want to say that I have the greatest respect for our law enforcement officers, police, sheriff, highway patrol, and district attorney. They put their lives on the line every day to protect us and keep us safe. Just remember, at 3 o'clock in the morning, when someone is breaking into your home, you want to be able to call 911 and have a law enforcement officer come to your rescue. Law enforcement officers do so many good things for the community that go unnoticed. So I'd like to mention those today. For example, community engagement is a top priority at the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. They have programs such as Shop with the Sheriff, where disadvantaged children can shop with someone from the sheriff's office and have a once-in-a-lifetime shopping spree where they can buy things for their family or their self. Coffee with a Cop, elementary school outreach deputy program, sheriff's office community resource fairs, Christmas in July, back to school free backpack and school supply event. Las Vegas Metro Police Department also has many community outreach programs, such as Hope for Prisoners, to empower and equip individuals exiting various areas of the judicial system to successfully re-enter society. First Tuesday, every 15 minutes, Explorers, Homeless Outreach Team, and Multicultural Advisory Council, just to name a few. But nevertheless, these programs will not bring 18-year-old Micaiah back. There must have been a different approach that could have been taken on the evening of January 5th, 2020, when law enforcement officers were aware that they were dealing with a person who was mentally disturbed and suicidal. I believe that de-escalation techniques and crisis intervention by trained officers would have yielded a different outcome. There are 2 studies that I found on de-escalation techniques and their outcomes. The first is a study of patients with mental disabilities titled Strategies to De-escalate Behavior. The study showed that the staff training in de-escalation techniques and other interventions to prevent or de-escalate aggressive behavior led to fewer incidents. Another study titled Examining the Impact of Integrating Communication, Assessment, and Tactics, De-escalation Training for the Louisville Metro Police Department initial findings it was found that de-escalation training run by the Police Executive Research Forum dramatically cut use of force incidents and injuries to citizens and officers. Not only was there a decline in use of force and citizen injury, but the biggest decline was actually in officer injuries. In conclusion, my hope is that by putting these de-escalation and crisis intervention policies into law and into action, we can prevent something like this from ever happening again. I would appreciate your support on AB 268, and Chair, with your permission, I'd like to turn it over to my co-presenters.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Krasner. We'll do that, but I wanted to make sure with Mr. Secretary, if we could also make sure that the record reflects that Assemblyman Matthews is absent excused. I don't believe that I stated that at the beginning, and I just wanted to make sure that the record did reflect that. And my apologies, Assemblywoman Krasner. I just wanted to make sure I didn't forget to do that. If we can move on to your co-presenter, please. Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Chairman Flores,
Yes?
my co-presenters, I see that they're here, but their camera's not on. It's Ms. Stephanie McCurry and Mr. Lonnie Feemster.
I think I saw them just now. There we go. Good morning.
Good morning.
Ready.
Happy Friday. I want to thank Assemblywoman Krasner for reaching out to the NAACP branch. I am Stephanie McCurry, the current president of the Reno Sparks Chapter Unit 1112. I'm here speaking in support of Assembly Bill 268, also known as Micah Lee's bill, which establishes provisions relating to peace officers. To the Honorable Chair, Vice Chair, members, and staff. We, the Reno Sparks NAACP Unit 1112, write to express our support for Assembly Bill 268. To assure full transparency in law enforcement interactions with the public, this bill requires those agencies throughout the state of Nevada to adopt a written use of force policy. Moreover, it requires law enforcement personnel to undergo crisis intervention training, learning to use de-escalation techniques when feasible. Additionally, the training enables officers to interact confidently and professionally with those driven by suicide ideation or who, in the end, attempt suicide, whether by cop or otherwise. As you may know, individuals with mental illness are more likely to have an encounter with law enforcement officers or other first responders than the average citizen. AB 268 offers training in a different kind of force. It equips officers with the ability to communicate expertly in greater detail with both those who suffer from mental illness and with their families. How powerful. With proper crisis intervention training, law enforcement officers have an extraordinary opportunity. They have an extraordinary opportunity to deliver a level of persuasion that can guide persons to a facility for extended care or follow-up treatment. The intention of AB 268 is to avoid loss of life. Recall, as Assemblywoman Krasner did, recall Micah Lee, a young Black man who at the tender age of 18 years old was killed last year by an officer after his mother called 911 dispatch to report that her son was suicidal. In a profession where the fallout often cannot be remedied or altered, passage of AB 268 will demonstrate the concern that the state of Nevada has for the mentally ill, their families, and among these, the officers themselves. We are reminded by law enforcement officers that they must first and foremost take control of a scene. To be clear, we support the application of de-escalation techniques in all societal interactions, but especially those in marginalized and communities of color. If we, people of color, Latinx, BIPOC, LGBTQI+, the collective we, accept this as accurate, it matters even more how officers respond to a crisis. It matters even the more how they respond to our loved ones. It also matters how this distinguished body of legislators responds to this bill today. We thank Assembly Woman Krasner for proposing such a transformative piece of legislation, and working together this bill is good groundwork for future legislation to come as we all grow in our humanity together. I thank you for including the branch and myself and yield the floor.
And thank you for joining us this morning. It's a pleasure to have you. Assemblywoman Krasner, you mentioned that you wanted to have one additional co-presenter. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Lonnie Feemster. I see that he's also on the screen, but his camera is not on. If broadcast could please turn Mr. Lonnie Feemster's camera on. He's my other co-presenter. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Good morning and welcome. Just wanted to let you know, I believe your microphone is on mute. Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. I am Lonnie L. Feemster, and I'm testifying in support of AB 268. I have lived in Northern Nevada all my life, and I've served as the past president of the Reno Sparks NAACP for 5 terms, and currently serve as the vice president of the NAACP Idaho, Nevada, Utah Tri-State Conference of Branches. I've watched too many body camera videos of young men under severe mental distress who lost their lives because of a lack of policy and practice that would reduce the likelihood of a deadly encounter with law enforcement personnel. Passage of AB 268 will help to provide a higher level of trust in our law enforcement. To lose public trust does great harm to many citizens. To needlessly lose a life causes a great sadness to many. The public must rely on law enforcement personnel to resolve an increasing number of potentially deadly situations. Many times it is a family who calls for these situations. This is called Micaiah's Law, but I also had a nephew shot. He called 911 himself. He was about Micaiah's age a few years ago. And this is very troubling from that perspective. I believe that with your help to pass this legislation, we will greatly reduce the tragedy of many deadly situations. And I think AB 268 improves the likelihood that qualified and capable resources will be available when the public calls for help. We can provide consistency in policy and practices and increase public trust and reduce the number of tragic incidents. And I'd also like to personally thank Assemblywoman Krasner for caring about this and getting the support and bringing this bill to the Assembly and the state. And thank you.
And thank you for joining us this morning and sharing your story. Assemblywoman Krasner, would you like to continue with any remarks, or would you like at this time to open it up for questions?
Chairman, if you would like to go to testimony or questions, either one is fine with me, sir.
Understood. So at this time, we'll open it up for questions on Assembly Bill 268. Members, any questions?
Number of tragic incidents. And
Not sure. We were getting some feedback. So I'm going to the chat now and reviewing what members have questions. We'll start off with Assemblywoman Thomas, please.
Good morning, Chair, and thank you for allowing me to ask the question to Assemblywoman Krasner. Thank you so much for presenting AB 268. This is a start, and I appreciate your the testimonies from both your guests. My question actually has to deal with Section 1. When I'm looking at Section 1, subsection 1, the guidelines for the use of force, this is a directive, if I'm correct, that you would like our enforcement agencies to follow. So I was wondering, the language in here, why you decided to use a requirement instead of saying shall require that police officers, etc. Thank you.
Chairman Flores, through you to Assemblywoman Thomas, thank you for your very important question. Currently, in the state of Nevada, many law enforcement agencies, including Las Vegas Metro Police Department and the Washoe County Sheriff's Department, already have written policies regarding de-escalation techniques and crisis intervention and use of force. I don't know if all 17 counties do. What this bill would do is make sure that all 17 counties do have a written policy regarding use of force, de-escalation, and crisis intervention.
Thank you for that. Chair, please a follow-up.
Please follow up.
Thank you, sir. That's why I'm wondering, the language to me would be significant for all of our agencies in the state of Nevada to have a directive with the terminology of shall, meaning that there's no wiggle room in there. You know, like you said, Metro down in the South, already have policies on the books, but in recent years we've seen where instead of can't even say that word today, escalation, that there is still justifiable killing, murder of a civilian who has been approached by Metro or any other police officer. So I'm not trying to be harsh here, and I just, I feel that maybe the word shall in there provides teeth in your bill, where, the police officers know that this is more than a requirement. It's something that they shall do. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Flores. Assemblywoman Lisa Krasner, for the record, to Assemblywoman Thomas. In Section 1, Sub 1, it does say shall. It says each law enforcement agency shall adopt a written policy. That word shall is there in Section 1, Sub 1. If that's what you're referring to.
Exactly. But, just to be consistent with the language in there, I just, was looking at it that way. But I understand and I appreciate your explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. I think a lot of us echo the sentiment that we appreciate Assemblywoman Krasner's ensuring that we have that written policy. So thank you for that. We'll go next to Assemblywoman Oh, excuse me, I think I had committed to Assemblywoman Dickman, and then afterwards we'll go to Assemblywoman Anderson. Assemblywoman Dickman, please.
Thank you, Chair Flores. And thank you, Assemblywoman Krasner. Parts of this I think are really good, but I have a question about Section 3, Sub 1, where it talks about if the police officer doesn't think that the person poses an imminent threat to others, just himself. But in a crisis circumstance, how would the officer determine if the suicidal person might quickly become a danger to others? At what point would deadly force be understandable or acceptable?
Thank you for your question. Chair Flores, through you to Assemblywoman Dickman and Lisa Krasner for the record. Section 3, Sub 1 that you're asking about is the current policy for the Washoe County Sheriff's Department, which is where I got the specific language, and the Las Vegas Metro Police Department, which is already following these exact prescriptions in the bill. And you can ask them because they're both in support of this bill and they will be testifying later in support. They would be a good one to ask about their training on this.
Okay, it sometimes concerns me when legislators who aren't experienced in law enforcement and critical snap decision situations make laws dictating how police officers should do their job. So if the police are good with this, then certainly I'm good with it. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Next,
Chairman Flores, through you to Assemblywoman Dickman. Yes, and I would never do that, Assemblywoman Lisa Krasner for the record. I'd never do that. And that's why I consulted with both the Las Vegas Metro Police Department and the Washoe County Sheriff's Office before ever putting this bill together. And only with their help in the language of the bill did I write the bill, draft the bill. That is why both of them are in support of AB 268.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Next, we'll go to Assemblywoman Anderson, please.
Thank you, Chair Flores, and thank you, Assemblymember Krasner, for bringing this forward. As well as I just wanted to pass on my thank you to Ms. McCurry and Mr. Feemster, and also to offer my condolences, Mr. Feemster. I know that we've talked to each other many times, and I don't believe I did offer those condolences earlier, so please accept them very late. My question has to do with the idea of having each law enforcement agency adopting a written policy. And I agree with the majority of these items that are being, actually, I agree with almost all of it. I've got a question about what would be the written policy, like who's going to be the individual, or what's going to be the individual to double check this? Will these written policies be expected to be turned into the Nevada State Legislature? Would they be expected to be turned into another elected entity? Because both areas that you're speaking of for both Washoe County Sheriff as well as Metro, those get both probably turned into the sheriff or that one area. But since it's every law enforcement agency having to do this, where's the checks and balances? And again, I want to make sure it's clear. I agree with this. I just think this needs to be a little bit clearer as to making sure where we're doing the checks and balances, that those policies are actually happening.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Lisa Krasner, for the record, through Chairman Flores to Assemblywoman Anderson. Thank you for your wonderful question. This would just require that each law enforcement agency adopts a written policy regarding the use of force within their own agency. I have no intention of policing the police. That's not my job. This merely requests that each law enforcement agency has a policy within their agency that's written down that deals with the use of force and also discusses de-escalation techniques, crisis intervention techniques, in regards to use of force when somebody who is suicidal or mentally ill. That's it.
Good. Follow up, Mr. Chair.
Please.
Thank you. So just to make sure then, because that is why we were elected though, is to make sure that we are in fact enacting, in my opinion, enacting policies as well as legislation or laws that are actually being followed. So is there an expectation that these policies would be turned in, or is it just going to be on trust, or would it become a Freedom of Information Act that we would just have to have? Is that kind of what you're saying, is that you're just going to put it in there, but there's not going to be any double checking of those reports?
Assemblywoman Lisa Krasner through Chairman Flores to Assemblywoman Anderson. Once again, this law that I am presenting only asks that every law enforcement agency in the state shall adopt a written policy regarding the use of force, which includes de-escalation techniques, crisis intervention in regards to persons who are known to be mentally ill or suicidal. I am not requiring anybody to turn it into me or turn it into anybody else. I guess maybe 2 years from now, if somebody else wants to bring that bill, that would be up to them. But that's not what this bill says. Again, this bill is just a small step. I know some people think it's a big step. Some people think it's not a step. But the kind of legislation that I like to bring, Assemblywoman Anderson, is just a small step that everybody can agree on. And that's why if you look at the bill, you'll see that it has bipartisan support. There's 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. It's pretty rare when you have any bill where you have the NAACP and law enforcement both testifying arm in arm in support. And I think that is the bigger thing that we need to keep in mind here. And I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
And thank you for that. I respect what you're saying, because I think that that's one of the beauties about having a Nevada state legislature made up of individuals who try to work with each other. So I really appreciate the variety of individuals who are supporting it. And I'm thinking maybe even doing something like the city of Sparks has started to do with their policies, putting it online, could be a possibility for future discussion and or even for regulations, or for each of those agencies to make the decision to show that they realize the importance of this legislation and the importance of working with each other. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Members, any additional questions? Assemblywoman Duran, please.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Ms. Assemblywoman Krasner, for bringing this bill. I think it is much needed. But I have a couple questions. First of all, I think, we should be, there should be continuity across the state about policy and procedures. So one department isn't doing something else. This way, everybody's like on a level playing field. Number one, I think that would be very important because of the fact that, each county is or each city and state is a little bit different. But I think if we have a policy that's consistent throughout the state would probably be best. And I know each situation is going to be a little bit different, but that's just a thought on that. Number one. And on the training that you proposed in here, is there going to be a minimum amount, and is it going to be continuously as, maybe a refresher or something like that, just to do this? And I think it's a great idea.
Assemblywoman Lisa Krasner, for the record, through Chair Flores to Assemblywoman Duran. Thank you for your question. You are referring to Section 1, sub F sub 2, and at the bottom there it does refer to paragraph I of subsection 1 of NRS 289.510. And if you look at the NRS 289.510 subsection I, it does say, it's already the current law, that all peace officers must have 12 hours of continuing requirements annually in education and courses that do relate to racial profiling, mental illness, well-being of officers, de-escalation, implicit bias, human trafficking. So that is actually already in the law. That's already in the law. And it goes further to talk about developing and approving a standard curriculum of training for crisis intervention. But again, that's already in the law.
I apologize. I didn't check. I didn't go to NRS 289-510. My apologies on that. But yeah, so that's great. I think, you know, it's continuous training is always a good thing. And did you have any ideas about the continuity from law enforcement throughout the state?
Assemblywoman Lisa Krasner, for the record, as I did mention, I worked together with Las Vegas Metro Police Department and the Washoe County Sheriff's Department on this. They both have excellent policies in place. Either of those two agencies could serve as a model for the other 15 counties and the other agencies. But again, I felt it was more important to just take a small step and make sure that every single law enforcement agency does in fact have a written policy in place regarding use of force, regarding de-escalation techniques, regarding crisis intervention, and regarding use of force when somebody is known to be mentally ill or suicidal. So it may be just a small step, but I feel like even a small step in the right direction is progress.
And I thank you for that.
And members will continue with questions. We'll go to Assemblywoman Thomas. Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, so just one quick
Please.
follow-up. This one, Assemblywoman Krasner, I was just wondering, have you spoken with Metro and how many officers are qualified for crisis intervention?
Assemblywoman Lisa Krasner, for the record, Chairman Flores, through you to Assemblywoman Thomas. I have not asked that question to Las Vegas Metro Police Department. However, we're very lucky to have Mr. Chuck Calloway here with us today. He will be testifying in support, and if it's the chair's prerogative and okay with our chair, you could ask him that question. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll get to that question a little bit later, Assemblywoman Thomas. I noticed on the chat, Ms. Stephanie McCurry had mentioned that wanted to add some additional input to one of the questions.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, for the record, Stephanie McCurry, President NAACP, advised that at no time have we been contacted by any particular law enforcement agency, nor do we want to create the perception that we are working arm in arm with any law enforcement agency. We are here representing communities of color that are already at a disadvantage and losing loved ones because of lack of training. And so we are here to advocate for those communities that are being affected by heavy policing and adverse tactics. So just for the record, we want to state that we are on the side of the people. That they need protection. And again, as I said in my letter, that AB 26 is to avoid the loss of life. And that is our stance on this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. And members, any additional questions? I'm I'm going back to the chat. I don't believe we have any additional questions. Members, if we do, please feel free to unmute yourself at this time. Seeing none. At this time, I'd like to invite those wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 268. And Assemblywoman Krasner, do we have anybody who's joining us virtually that wanted to testify in support?
Thank you, Chairman Flores. I believe Mr. Chuck Calloway from Las Vegas Metro is on the line, and Mr. Corey Selfarino from the Washoe County Sheriff is also on the line. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I do see we have Mr. Andrew Barbano, who's here to testify in support of Assembly Bill 268, joining us virtually. We'll start
Yes.
with Mr. Andrew Barbano. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Whenever you're ready.
Rock and roll. My name's Andrew Barbano. I'm a 52-year Nevadan. I resided both in Reno and Las Vegas. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you today, and thank Assemblywoman Krasner for the opportunity and for her leadership here. I'm the editor of NevadaLabor.com and a longtime member and officer of the Reno Sparks NAACP. Last year, we made the slaying of distraught teenager Micaiah Lee a statewide and national issue. His name now appears with so many others on websites and demonstrations and before governments all across the country. I support Assembly Bill 268 because Micaiah Lee had in the case of Micaiah Lee, had existing systems like the Rapid Response Task Force that Assemblywoman Krasner referred to that already exist in Las Vegas and Reno. The Rapid Response Team existed for years. The 3 Sparks police officers, I write for the Sparks Tribune, so watch next week's paper. The 3 police officers who responded to Micaiah Lee in a disabled car on a busy street, they knew that he was mentally ill. They chose not to use the rapid response system to bring psychiatric professionals to de-escalate the situation. This is why the video that's posted online has been carefully edited by the Sparks Police Department to cover up Micaiah Lee's execution by the Sparks cops. I'm speaking from experience. I'm speaking from what I know. Go watch it. It's disgusting to look at, even with the edited out portions. So it's going to cost the city of Sparks a few $1,000,000. Who cares? It's just a black kid. So please allow me to memorialize this young man's life for posterity in today's legislative record with a little poetry, because nothing else seems to work. Ask questions first and shoot later. A limerick in remembrance of Micaiah Lee. Before you start shooting the mentally troubled, call in the pros to assist on the double. An easy decision, no ifs, ands, or buts. To do otherwise is plainly just nuts. Thanks to Assemblywoman Krasner for bringing this. There's a companion bill in the Senate by Senator Harris, Senate Bill 212. And I hope something comes out of this legislative session to mandate the cops using the rapid response system before they start shooting. Please do that. The systems are in place. They've been in place for years. And it's a travesty that we have to have a legislative bill and a law, as the former Assemblyman Thomas, I believe, noted, with lots of shalls in it to order the cops to use the system that's been in place for a hell of a long time. Thank you so much for your service, for your time. Be well, raise hell. Andrew Barbano, Reno, Nevada, Reno Sparks NAACP. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barbano, for joining us this morning. We'll continue with those wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 268, and we'll go to the phone lines. Broadcast, please.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support of Assembly Bill 268, Please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 037. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Tanya Brown, TONJABROWN, advocates for the inmates and the innocent. We support this bill, and we comment the previous caller's comment made. This bill is long overdue. I would just like to add that this is a start. It doesn't quite fix the problem, but it is a beginning. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us this morning. We'll continue with support for Assembly Bill 268.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 318. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chair Flores and members of the committee. This is Kendra Birchie, KendraBertschy, and I'm testifying today on behalf of the Washoe County Public Defender's Office, the Clark County Public Defender's Office, as well as the ACLU of Nevada. We greatly appreciate Assemblywoman Krasner for bringing forward this bill. What happened to Micaiah and his family is an absolute tragedy. As Leslie Turner with Mass Liberation has stated, when someone dies at the hands of law enforcement, we need to look at what happened. A life lost is a failure. We appreciate that Assemblywoman Krasner was willing to take a look at what happened and to bring this bill forward. This bill will not bring Micaiah back or solve all of the problems that came to light in how this case was handled, but it is a significant start that will hopefully save the life of someone else, so another mother does not have to bury a son or daughter. Mental health is a public health crisis and shouldn't be a police matter. Cities across the nation are moving towards having social workers rather than police respond to calls reporting individuals suffering from a mental health crisis. We strongly believe that we should be working on solutions to not have someone with a gun be the first person on scene with someone suffering from a mental health crisis, and believe that this bill will work towards that. As to Assemblywoman Anderson's point, we do support her suggestion of requiring law enforcement to post their policies online. Currently, the Washoe County Sheriff's Office, Reno Police Department, as well as Sparks Police Department have done this in the wake of the tragedies that occurred in 2020. As stated in ACLU's letter of support, Americans with mental illness are experiencing a mental health crisis account for almost 25% of police killings. An analysis of an officer-involved shootings in Las Vegas for the Office of Community-Oriented Police Services of the U.S. Department of Justice found that 54% of fatal shootings involved those who were mentally impaired. Our community members demanded reform after Micaiah's death, and so we thank the Assemblywoman for bringing this bill and urge your support to help provide trust and transparency and for the safety of all of our community members. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us this morning. We'll continue with support on Assembly Bill 268. Next caller, please.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 346. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller with the last 3 digits of 346. You have 2 minutes
Good morning.
and may begin.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, please.
Good morning. Thank you. Good morning, Chair Flores and committee. Christine Jones-Brady for the record, calling in support of AB 268 on behalf of the Attorney General's office. This bill represents implementation of a reasonable policy that is consistent with precautionary measures we already employ at the Attorney General's office through the use of force defensive tactics training and other state-required training pursuant to the 2019 legislative session. We thank you for bringing this bill forward, and this is anecdotal evidence, but I have been told by some community members that they are sometimes afraid to call the police when a family member is having an acute episode because they don't want that family member to go to jail. They just want them to get help. So maybe this helps a little bit more with that. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us this morning. We'll continue with those wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 268. Next caller, please.
Thank you, Chair. Caller with the last three digits of 080. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, Jim Hoffman, Hoffman, Nevada Attorneys for Criminal Justice. NACJ supports AB 268. We believe this is a common sense reform. The logic in allowing police officers to use deadly force is that they're supposed to protect the public and themselves. But in a situation where someone is only a danger to themselves and not to others, shooting that person by definition is not doing anything to protect anyone, least of all the person themselves. Deadly force should be a last resort, and we believe this bill effectuates that goal. Thank you.
And thank you. And we'll continue with those in support of Assembly Bill 268. Next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits, 456. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chairman Flores and members of the committee. My name is AJ Delap of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. My last name is phonetically spelled David Easy Lincoln Adam Paul for the record. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department is in support of AB 268 and thank Assemblywoman Krasner for bringing forth this measure. The Assemblywoman spoke of Chuck Calloway being able to join the meeting. He's asked me to call in his place. He is caught up on another measure, and I'll be available for questions as necessary. With that, I would like to conclude my testimony on AB 268. Thank you, Chairman Flores and members of the committee for your time.
Thank you. And I don't know that we have any questions for you at this time. I do know that Assemblywoman Thomas had raised a question regarding crisis intervention training and if we had any data on what officers can proudly wear the badge of saying that they have that training. I also know that speaking with our folk here that we have a bill proposing that very issue that will be discussed next week. But I don't know if you wanted to contribute anything to that dialogue for the sake of addressing the Assemblywoman.
This is broadcast. If the gentleman who just spoke would like to respond, please press *9. Go ahead, sir. You may respond.
Oh, sorry.
Chairman Flores, AJ Delap with Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department is back, and I believe that you can hear me. Is that correct?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
And I'd be happy to answer any question as I can right now, or I can follow up with information. I believe the question was regarding crisis intervention training for officers and such.
That's correct. And I think the Assemblywoman was just trying to grasp and get a better understanding that should an officer respond to a call where really what we need is crisis intervention rather than anything else, how equipped or statistically how likely is it that that officer would be prepared to do that because she or he has undergone the necessary training. But I don't know that you have an actual answer to that question.
Chairman Flores. I can only speak of our agency, and I will give you the number of around 80% of our patrol officers. We're an agency of over 3,000 officers, but 80% of our patrol officers are trained in crisis intervention, and then they recertify that on a regular basis. And our protocols dictate that whenever possible, calls involving mental health issues or things of that nature, it could be a suicide attempt, in that genre of police service, that crisis intervention trained officers respond to that. And then they're also giving the authority to take control of the call regardless of the rank of the personnel that are already there. As far as other agencies, unfortunately, I can't speak to that, but we could certainly query them and have that information sent over to the assembly or to the assembly person. I'm not sure who asked the question. I apologize.
No, thank you. That was Assemblywoman Thomas. And if we could just send it to the whole committee, that'd be useful. And we can get it over to our committee manager, Judy Bishop, and she can make sure that we all get that. Thank you, sir. And thank you for joining us this morning. We'll continue to the next caller wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 268.
Thank you, Chair. We are currently in support of Assembly Bill 268. Please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 887. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chair Flores, Vice Chair Torres, and members of the Government Affairs Committee. My name is Corey Solferino for the record. It's C-O-R-E-Y, S as in Sam, O-L, F as in Frank, E-R-I-N-O. And I have the pleasure of representing the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. We want to take this opportunity this morning to thank Assemblywoman Krasner for reaching out to us regarding AB 268. We believe that our model policy and some of the de-escalation techniques that we've been utilizing for the past 20 plus years have been instrumental in the Washoe County Sheriff's Office successes in dealing with public and people suffering from mental crises. We also wanted to point out that our policies are available online for all to see by going to washoesheriff.com. And with the recent completion of our online survey, we are taking public support and public comments and making those into additional policies. So I want to thank Assemblywoman Krasner for reaching out to us and helping drive good policy within the state of Nevada. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
And thank you. We'll go to the next caller in support of Assembly Bill 268.
Thank you, Chair. Caller with the last 3 digits, 142. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, my name is Kaylee Barnett for the record, K-A-I-L-E-Y-B-A-R-N-E-T-T. I support AB 268. I personally got to know Susan McKiley's mother over the summer, and no one should have to experience losing a child like she did. Mental health should not be a crime punishable by death. This is not nearly enough, but it's a step in the right direction. I yield my time.
And thank you for joining us. Next caller in support of Assembly Bill 268.
Thank you, Chair. Caller with the last 3 digits of 213. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Anne Marie Grant, A-N-N-E-M-A-R-I-E-G-R-A-N-T. I support AB 268 as it's an attempt at transparency and accountability. Of course, each law enforcement agency should have a use of force policy. Per fatalencounters.org, 395 people, somebody's loved one, have died during interactions with police in Nevada since the year 2000. That number does not include those killed after booking at a jail or prison. Perhaps my non-combative, non-assaultive, non-aggressive 140-pound brother would not have been placed into a hog tie against every page of the device manual instructions for 40-plus minutes by Reno police and then asphyxiated to death by Washoe County deputies. It's shocking. They claim they've had such great success not killing the mentally ill. They've asphyxiated 3 men. My brother was killed simply for asking for help during a mental health crisis. Perhaps had officers had this additional training about community members in crisis, Micaiah Lee, Philip Serrano, Kenneth Stafford, Micah Abbey, Daniel Murillo, my brother Thomas Purdy, and so many others would be alive today. Watered down bills are not designed to prosecute the police, but rather to restore public confidence in the police. They are used to diffuse demands for prosecuting police brutality and minimize punishment for guilty cops. What families really want is true change, so no other families have to know this pain, and for our loved one's killer to be held accountable, as anyone not wearing a badge would be. Honestly, until Graham v. Connor and Tennessee v. Garner are overturned and the DAs prosecute police who use excessive force, murder, or kill due to negligence, it's just like putting a Band-Aid on a deep wound, and the language in this bill mirrors the two SCOTUS cases I mentioned before. For it to be reasonable, all the officer has to say is they feared for their life, and that's enough legally, even with this bill, to justify the shooting. I do believe they are trained extensively at the Academy on this reasonableness issue. In 2019, California changed its use of force law. It changed the word reasonable to necessary, and so many are still being killed at the hands of law enforcement. So it's not a surprise that there isn't police opposition to this bill. I can't speak to Clark County, but Washoe, if someone were to die by means of asphyxiation, there would be no investigation like officer-involved deaths. My brother was a danger to nobody, perhaps not even to himself. If Reno PD asphyxiated my non-combative, non-aggressive, mentally ill brother and thought it was reasonable, I ask, what isn't reasonable in their eyes? It's clear the police are a far greater danger to the community than the community to them. Until we have laws that actually do not allow police to kill without consequence, forgive me for my skepticism, I do not believe things will change. I do support the bill moving forward, but not because I believe it will stop police from murdering without consequence, or that it will reduce deaths at the hands of police. Thank you.
Ma'am, just for the sake of clarity, and thank you for calling in, and as always, it's always heartbreaking to hear the story of your brother. My understanding is that you are then in opposition to this bill because you don't believe.
No, I support the bill because something is better than nothing.
Okay, understood. Just wanted to make the record clear. So we'll mark that as support. Thank you, ma'am. We'll continue with support of Assembly Bill 268.
Thank you, Chair. If you've recently joined the call, please press *9 now to provide testimony in support of Assembly Bill 268. Caller with the last 3 digits, 766. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller with the last 3 digits, 766. You can press *6 to unmute yourself. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, yes, my name is Matthew Wilkie, and I would like to go on the record in support of this bill. Like the previous caller stated, there are things that we can do greater. However, something is better than nothing. I do believe that with this bill in place, people like Thomas Purdy, Micaiah Lee, everyone else that she stated could potentially be alive today. So thank you so much, and I hope and I am supportive of this bill. Thank you so much.
And thank you. We'll continue with those wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 268.
Thank you, Chair. Caller with the last 3 digits, 039. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, my name is Erica Minaberry. That's ErikaMinaberry, and I am calling in support of this bill because I know a lot of people that have mental health issues, and we are all afraid of calling the cops if we are in distress, and that is not the way that society should work. So please vote in support of this bill in the name of Micaiah Lee and all of those that we have lost. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 050. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin. Go ahead, caller. I see you've unmuted yourself. Last 3 digits of 050. You can press *6. Please press *6 one more time. Mr. Chair, that is the last caller that's indicated they wanted to provide testimony in support of Assembly Bill 268.
Thank you. At this time, we'll go to those wishing to testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 268.
If you would like to testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 268, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. If you've recently joined the call and would like to provide testimony in opposition of Assembly Bill 268, please press *9 now. Mr. Chair, there are no callers indicating they would like to provide opposition testimony.
Thank you. Next, we'll invite those wishing to testify in the neutral position to Assembly Bill 268.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in the neutral position for Assembly Bill 268, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Mr. Chair, there are no callers indicating that they would like to provide neutral testimony at this time.
Thank you. At this time, Assemblywoman Krasner, any closing remarks you may have?
Yes, Assemblywoman Lisa Krasner for the record. Thank you, Chairman Flores and members of the committee for giving me the opportunity to present the bill to you today. This concludes my presentation, but I do want to take a moment to say thank you to the NAACP, the Attorney General's Office, Las Vegas Metro Police Department, and the Washoe County Sheriff's Department. I do appreciate your help, and I thank you for your time. I would sincerely appreciate your support on AB 268.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Krasner, and I appreciate you working with such an array group of folk. I never expected to see you with all the progressive groups right behind you, so I appreciate you working with so many folk. We appreciate the spirit of the work you're doing. With that, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Assembly Bill 268. And next on the agenda, we have Assembly Bill 280. We'll go ahead and open up the hearing on Assembly Bill 280 whenever you're ready. Good morning and welcome.
Morning, Chair Flores and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Sarah Peters. I represent Assembly District 24 in Reno. I'm here to present Assembly Bill 280 for your consideration. Nevada law already provides that all people are entitled to the full and equal enjoyment of the goods, services, facilities, privileges, advantages, and accommodations of any place of public accommodation without discrimination or segregation on the grounds of race, color, religion, national orientation or origin, disability, sexual orientation, sex or gender identity or expression. This includes any establishment or place to which the public is invited or which is intended for public use, such as hotels, restaurants, bars, gas stations, theaters, private schools and universities, daycare centers, senior citizen centers, and gymnasiums, to name a few. With AB 280, we are trying to ensure that all publicly accessible single-stall restrooms are not limited to any one gender or limit access to disabled people or their caregivers. Additionally, the bill offers protections through inclusion of this requirement and penalties for persons that choose to discriminate by limiting the use of single-stall restrooms for a specific gender. You know those moments as a parent when you awkwardly take your son into the women's restroom and he says, "I can't go in there, it's for girls." It's for cringeworthy moments. Another scenario includes the dignity of people with disabilities, even short-term disabilities. When you, as a friend or partner or family member of someone who needs help to use the restroom, it remains awkward to choose which gender restroom do you enter. This bill really gets to the issue of dignity and how you choose a public restroom, and creates equity and ability to enter a space without the fear of judgment or reprisal or even explanation. I would like to briefly provide a section-by-section overview, and then I will turn it over to Andre Wade with Silver State Equality for additional remarks. After that, we will open up for questions. Starting with Section 1, in instances where a place of public accommodation provides a single-stall bathroom, Section 1 requires the single-stall restroom to be as inclusive and accessible as possible, including by allowing a parent or guardian of a child to enter the single-stall restroom with the child, a person with a disability to enter the single-stall restroom with his or her caregiver if needed, and a person of any gender identity or expression to use the single-stall restroom as needed. Section 1 also prohibits the owner or operator of a place of public accommodation from labeling a single-stall restroom with signage that indicates the restroom is for a specific gender, and instead authorizes the labeling of single-stall restrooms as available for use by any person, such as with a sign that reads all gender bathroom or all accessible bathroom. Section 1 also describes a single-stall restroom as one that is intended for individual use and contains a single toilet or a single urinal, or contains both a toilet and a urinal. In addition to these changes, Section 1 allows any person who believes he or she has been denied full and equal use of a single-stall restroom because of discrimination or segregation to file a complaint to that effect with the Nevada Equal Rights Commission. Section 2, 3, and 15 make conforming changes related to the private clubs, marketing, and signage. Section 4 provides that any person who deprives, interferes with, or punishes another person for accessing a single-stall restroom is guilty of a misdemeanor. Section 5 provides that any person who deprives, interferes with, or punishes another person for accessing single-stall restrooms is liable to the person whose access is affected or actual damages that are recoverable by a civil action. Section 6 authorizes any county or incorporated city to adopt an ordinance to prohibit the infringement of a person's rights, privileges, or access to a single-stall restroom. Section 9 requires any governmental entity that adopts a building code to include a requirement that any single-stall restroom made available to the public and contained in a permanent building or facility used by the public and that is constructed on or after October 1 of 2021 comply with provisions of this bill related to single-stall restrooms. Section 9 also provides that if a county or city has no building code, the county or city is required to adopt such requirements by ordinance. Section 7, 8, and 10 make conforming changes related to county building codes, city building codes, and planning and zoning statutes. Section 11, both sections 11 and 12 make provisions related to single-stall restrooms applicable to a public building or facility owned by a public body and an area leased by or on behalf of a public body and used primarily to provide services to the public, including certain leased areas within a state park. Section 12 provides that a contract for such a leased area does not satisfy those requirements, which is entered into on or after October 1, 2021 is void and unenforceable. And finally, Section 14 authorizes a person to report a violation committed by a public body or to the Attorney General, who is required to notify the public body responsible for the alleged violation. If the public body fails to comply with the provisions regarding single-stall restrooms, the Attorney General is required to take action and as is necessary to ensure compliance. To be clear, this bill does not require any restroom retrofit or obligation aside from the sign change. I would graciously ask that legal confirm this on the record, please.
Hi, this is Erin Sturdivant, Legislative Counsel Bureau. The bill does not require anyone to change any existing bathrooms. The bill only addresses sign requirements.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Again, Sarah Peters for the record. I have a simple I have provided a simple conceptual amendment which clarifies that this bill's intent is only to address the gender neutral signage for single stall bathrooms and does not in any way affect ADA requirements. That is under a separate statute. Additionally, in consultation with stakeholders, we are also working on an amendment to add a grace period for implementation that may look like up to 120 days following the bill's effective date. This concludes my overview of the bill. I have with me Andre Wade with Silver State Equality today to add testimony to the purpose and importance of this bill.
Thank you, Assemblywoman, and good morning, Chair Flores, Vice Chair Torres, and esteemed committee members. Again, my name is Andre Wade, and I'm the State Director for Silver State Equality, a Nevada-based LGBTQ+ civil rights organization in Nevada. We bring the voices of LGBTQ+ people and allies to institutions of power in Nevada and across the United States, striving to create a world that is healthy, just, and fully equal for all LGBTQ+ people, and we fully stand by AB 280. Compliance of the bill is a matter of changing a sign on a restroom door. Restricting access to single occupancy restrooms by gender is unnecessary and inconvenient. The general public already knows this. Just the other day, I was at downtown Summerlin, shopping for things I don't need, and I had to run to the restroom before heading to Sur La Table, and I don't even cook. My point is, I headed to the single occupancy restrooms, the one with the gender signage labeled for men. A woman and a young boy, probably about 8 or 9 years old, walked out as I was about to walk in. The woman apologized for using the restroom and said something to the effect, "Sorry, we really had to go." I didn't mind. I never do. Obviously, she didn't. And there are countless times when I'm in a restaurant or a bar and a woman uses the men's restroom out of convenience. In everyday life, the practice is already there. The LGBTQ Center of Southern Nevada was the first public facility in Nevada to implement gender-neutral restrooms. If you've never been, when you walk in, there's a common area with sinks to your right for everyone to wash their hands, regardless of gender or anything else. As you walk through, there are single stalls on your left and on your right. Further down, there's a space with just urinals. And of course, these stalls are designed for people who are differently abled. So people who use wheelchairs for mobility or walkers, etc., have easy access. When parents are there with their children who need assistance, they can freely walk in and use an array of stalls that fit their needs. I worked for the LGBTQ Center for about 4 years. And in those 4 years, there were 0 instances of any assault. And my understanding is that the prior 2 or 3 years before my tenure, there were 0 incidences. But there is 100% convenience for parents or caregivers with children, differently abled people, gender diverse individuals, and those who may be a bit older than I am. The city of Las Vegas soon followed by marking its single occupancy restrooms gender neutral as City Hall, and later Zappos implemented gender neutral restrooms on its campus. A 2013 report by the Williams Institute of UCLA's School of Law found that gender-specific restrooms pose serious risks to safety for gender-diverse individuals. 70% of survey respondents reported being verbally harassed or denied access. In 2015, the United States Department of Labor's Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, stated that equal access bathrooms that are all gender or all accessible is a best practice in the workplace. In 2019, the American Psychological Association stated that gender-inclusive restrooms are helpful for people whose family members, such as a child or someone who needs assistance, requires assistance from a person or caregiver who is of a different gender. Women are often inconvenienced by long lines when single-stall restrooms don't have the capacity to accommodate women efficiently. So to my earlier point, some women just end up using the men's restroom anyway. Equal access to single-stall restrooms would make it easier for parents. We need a no wrong door approach to single occupancy restrooms that are convenient for all. Thank you to Assemblywoman Peters for sponsoring this very practical piece of legislation. Silver State Equality is in full support of AB 280, and thank you to the committee in advance for your support. This concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Wade. We are open for questions as the committee has them.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Peters. I'm now looking through the chat to identify members wishing to engage in the conversation. We'll start off with Assemblyman Ellison, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got a couple questions. I've been noticing a lot in some of the smaller mini markets that they post the front door outside saying that there's no public bathrooms in there. And I happen to own one of them buildings. I call the State Department, the Health Department, and they said that is totally legal. The bathrooms were there for employees, not to the public. I disagree. I think if you got a business and you're using the business to obtain business, then the bathroom should be open to everybody, period. Then the other thing, we've got another business, it's a little small thing, that it just has restroom. And so how would you identify, just by saying public restroom, just how would you identify the door? Would you just say restroom or what? Could you answer that? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Sarah Peters for the record. This bill doesn't address the accessibility of the actual bathroom facility and the implementation of that at certain businesses. It is just strictly related to the signage. So in response to the question of how does that sign appear, in a variety of ways. We see restroom, we see all gender restroom, we see family restroom. At my office, we have a funny sign that has that we got on Amazon for like $5 that has a male image, figure, right, that is typical of a bathroom, a female figure that's typical of a bathroom, and then an alien, and it just says, I don't care, wash your hands. So there's a variety of options for how to address signage on your restrooms. And I think that in talking with stakeholders, the idea of a grace period is kind of to allow people to be creative about how they create those signs, and just encourage that dignity and accessibility to our single stall restrooms.
Follow up, Ms. Chair.
Follow up, please.
I really like that, and I would definitely like to know where to get my alien bathroom sign. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Assemblyman. We will next go to I'm looking through the chat now. Assemblywoman Black, did you have a question? I don't believe so. No? Members, any additional questions? Assemblywoman Thomas, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Assemblywoman Peters, for bringing this bill to the forefront. I think it's much needed. Just a quick question. You had mentioned something about a grace period, and I was trying to scan through the bill again, and I didn't see it. Can you point to where the grace period for, I'm assuming, for everyone to get into compliance?
Thank you for the question, Sarah Peters, for the record. That was a late request as of yesterday from a stakeholder, so we are still working on the amendment for that piece. But I considered that upon receipt of the bill. However, not being a small business owner, I was encouraged by the small business, I think it was the Henderson Chambers, who reached out and requested that there be a grace period for particularly like addressing the creative sign issue, right? People want to be able to brand themselves as small businesses, and this is another opportunity for that. So I will get that to you as soon as I know where it should be placed in the bill.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions? I am going through the video and the chat. If you do have a question, please feel free to unmute yourself at this time. Seeing none, thank you, Assemblywoman Peters, for your presentation, and thank you to your co-presenter. I will now go to the phone lines, as I don't believe we have anybody joining us wishing to testify virtually. So at this time, I'd like to invite those wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 280, and we'll go to the phone lines. Broadcast, please.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support of Assembly Bill 280, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 956. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, and thank you, Chair. For the record, this is Liz Davenport, Lizdavenport, the legal intern with the ACLU of Nevada. Thank you, Assemblywoman Peters, for bringing this bill. Normalizing gender-neutral bathrooms benefits a wide range of people. Having gender-neutral bathrooms is the most inclusive option and brings real health benefits to real people. The Federal Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, has endorsed and has released best practices guide that encourages the use of gender-neutral restroom facilities. Benefits of gender-neutral bathrooms range from benefiting families, those with disabilities, and transgender and gender nonconforming people. Gender-neutral bathrooms are safer for families with children, as parents can accompany other gender children to walk up without fear. Those with disabilities benefit from having an other gender caregiver able to access the bathroom without fear. And gender-inclusive bathrooms help make transgender and other gender nonconforming people feel safer in public spaces. Gender identity is an intrinsic part of each person's identity in everyday life. Using a bathroom should be about finding a safe place to do a normal daily function, wash your hands, check makeup, or other daily tasks, and not come with a fear of harassment or fear for personal safety from other bathroom goers. Transgender and gender nonconforming people continue to be harassed and attacked in gender-separated bathrooms, and to avoid these attacks will many times refrain from using a bathroom outside of their home or refrain from eating or drinking. Making single-use bathrooms gender-neutral can make an everyday activity a much safer, inclusive, and beneficial place for everyone. As a whole, society benefits by eliminating the gender distinction for single-use bathrooms. Thank you, and that concludes my testimony.
And thank you for joining us. We'll continue with those wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 280. Next caller, please.
Thank you, Chair. Caller with the last 3 digits, 904. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chair Flores and Vice Chair Torres and members of the committee. My name is Alex Camberos. That's AlexCamberos. And I'm a disabled, bisexual, Mexican-American man in a same-gender relationship. I share a home with my partner in the Mountains Edge community of Southwest Las Vegas. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of Battleborn Progress in support of AB 280. AB 280 would allow for single-use restrooms to be inclusive and accessible for all people, especially transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming people. Many of these people report being policed for their gender and having their privacy violated when using a public restroom with gender-designated bathrooms. Gender-inclusive restrooms help make gender nonconforming people more safe in public and better protects them from harassment and assaults. Gender-inclusive restrooms are also helpful for people whose family member, such as a child, person with a disability, or older adult, requires assistance from other gender parents or caregivers. As an ambulatory wheelchair user myself, I occasionally need assistance using a single-stall public restroom, and I don't always have a same-gender family member or friend available to assist me. Having the option for my mother to assist me, for example, would provide greater freedom to me and many people like me to use a public restroom with peace of mind. For these reasons and many others, we're asking you to support AB 280. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. We'll continue with those wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 280.
Thank you, Chair. Caller with the last three digits, 070. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, good morning, Chair Flores and Assembly Committee on Government Affairs. Thank you for this time. For the record, my name is Jasmine Margarita Tobin, T as in Tom, O, B as in boy, O, N as in Nancy. I go by Jazz. I am an organizer with Planned Parenthood Votes Nevada. Planned Parenthood Votes Nevada is in favor of AB 280. While they are a necessity for all people, for gender diverse Nevadans, bathrooms can be a place and source of harassment, policing, bullying, and violence. Not only would a gender inclusive bathrooms provide safe spaces for transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming Nevadans, this bill would also benefit Nevadans with disabilities. Gender-inclusive restrooms are helpful for people whose family member, such as a child, person with a disability, or older adult, requires assistance from different sex parents or caregivers. AB 280 would help create a safer, more inclusive Nevada all around. Thank you to Assemblywoman Sarah Peters, who sponsored AB 280, and Assemblywoman Selena Torres, who co-sponsored this bill. Assembly Committee on Government Affairs, I urge you to please support AB 280. Thank you all again for this time.
And thank you for joining us. Next caller in support of Assembly Bill 280.
Thank you, Chair. Caller with the last three digits, 130. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chair Flores and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Christine Saunders. That's CHRISTINESAUNDERS. And I'm the Policy Director with the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada, here in support of Assembly Bill 280. I want to echo the sentiments of those who spoke before me. AB 280 is a common sense bill to ensure that every Nevadan, regardless of their gender identity, support needs, or family makeup, has access to an open restroom when it is available, and we urge your support. Thank you.
And thank you. We'll continue with support for Assembly Bill 280. Next caller, please.
Thank you, Chair. If you've recently joined the call, we are currently in support for Assembly Bill 280. If you would like to provide testimony in support of Assembly Bill 280, please press star 9 now. Mr. Chair, there are no other callers in support at this time.
Thank you. At this time, we'll invite...
My apologies, Chair. Just as I was saying, somebody raised their hand.
Understood. Please.
Caller with the last three digits, 653. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning. Happy Friday morning to you, Chairman and the committee. My name is Dora Martinez, DORAMARTINEZ, and I'm calling in support of AB 280. I am totally blind, and I have been using men's bathroom for emergency. Sometimes I tell my dog, go find the bathroom when we're in airports or the University of Nevada, Reno, and he finds the nearest one, and it's the men's bathroom. I have not encountered any abuse while I'm in there. It must be the 80-pound dog I have, but I think this is a good stepping forward because it's already happening. So thank you, Assemblywoman Peters, for doing this. We appreciate you, and thank you so much. Have a blessed Friday.
And I'm glad we were able to get you on the record. Did anybody else log in there last minute? I want to make sure we get everybody who wishes to speak.
No, Chair, there are no other callers with their hand raised to indicate support at this time.
Thank you. So at this time, we'll move on to opposition to Assembly Bill 280. Broadcast, please.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 280, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. To testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 280, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Mr. Chair, there are no callers indicating opposition testimony at this time.
Thank you. At this time, we'll go to those wishing to testify in the neutral position.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in the neutral position of Assembly Bill 280, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. If you have neutral testimony for Assembly Bill 280, please press star 9. Mr. Chair, there are no callers indicating neutral testimony at this time.
Thank you. At this time, we'll go back to Assemblywoman Peters. Any closing remarks you may have?
Thank you, Chair Sarah Peters, for the record. I just want to encourage the committee to remember a time when that barrier of entry was just a sign. And I would encourage you to please support AB 280. Thank you so much for your consideration.
And thank you, Assemblywoman. I appreciate you and all who called in support. At this time, we're going to go ahead and close out the hearing on Assembly Bill 280. And next, we'll move on to public comment. Broadcast, anybody wishing to speak in public comment, we can go to them. But while we're getting to you, I want to remind everybody that public comment is a time for you to join us and speak in general matters that fall within the purview of our committee, but it's not a time to re-engage or reopen a hearing we just had. I don't want to cut you off. I want you to participate and encourage it, but I just want to make sure that we lay the ground rules so that we don't have to cut anybody off. So with that said, anybody wishing to join us for public comment, please do so at this time. Broadcast, please.
Thank you, Chair. To provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, to provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Mr. Chair, there are no callers on the line indicating that they would like to provide public comment at this time.
Understood. So with that, members, I want to remind you that this Monday, we'll be meeting at 9 a.m. I know that we were taking advantage of that 10 a.m. start time. Unfortunately, as you all know, we have 2 weeks and we have 40-something bills. So I want to make sure that you all understand that moving forward, we're going to hear a minimum of 3 bills per day, at times 4 or more. So just give yourself the opportunity to get some good rest this weekend, because this, unfortunately, is going to pick up really fast. And unfortunately, we won't always be able to give a heads up as we previously would on moving bills around. It's just the nature of how this works. So for Monday, I want to remind you, we have Assembly Bill 220, 236, and 337. Give yourself an opportunity to review those. I hope everybody has a great weekend. I really appreciate all the work this week. And I think Assemblyman Ellison there is showing some of his artistic freedom. Everybody have a great weekend. Wish you all the best, and I'll see you here Monday. This meeting's adjourned.